I know how this looks. A woman of a certain age sitting alone in a beige room with a view of a brick wall, telling a story that sounds too dramatic to be true. But before you judge me, before you wonder what I must have done wrong, let me tell you how I got here. My name is Evelyn Harris. I'm 65 years old, retired after 37 years of teaching high school English in a quiet suburb of Michigan. I've paid off my mortgage, keep my garden neat, and I know how to make a pot roast that can win over the grumpiest neighbor. I live alone, not because I have to, but because I like the quiet. It's a soft kind of freedom. I've always been proud of standing on my own feet. So when I woke up on my birthday this past spring, I didn't expect anything grand. I stretched, smiled at the morning sun coming through my kitchen window, and brewed the good coffee. Then, just for fun, I made David's favorite blueberry pancakes with too much syrup. My son hadn't been calling much lately. Said work was overwhelming. Said his marriage was going through a phase. Still, I thought, he'll come today. Birthday lunches had always been our thing, even after he married. I put on my favorite blouse, fluffed my hair, and set the table for two. The good china too, just in case. By noon, there was still no sign of him. I tried not to spiral. Maybe traffic. Maybe last-minute errands. I checked my phone a dozen times. No new texts, just old ones I reread for comfort. By 1:15, I'd nearly given up. Then the doorbell rang. It was David, holding a plastic-wrapped bouquet from the grocery store. "Happy birthday, Mom," he said, flashing that familiar grin he used to wear when he broke curfew and wanted to charm his way out of it. "You came?" I smiled, even though my chest stung. "Of course. Get dressed," he said quickly. "I made a reservation." I didn't even question it. I grabbed my purse, slipped on the shoes that always pinched but looked nice, and followed him to the car. I felt giddy, like a girl going to prom. But we didn't head toward the city. We drove for nearly 40 minutes past downtown, through winding side roads lined with quiet trees and still ponds. When we turned into a long driveway and I saw the sign, my stomach dropped. Willow Haven Senior Living. I blinked. "David, what is this?" He didn't look at me. "Mom, we need to talk." When he opened the trunk, I saw my suitcase, already packed. Legal papers, power of attorney, pre-signed, my name, his signature. They led me to a room that smelled of disinfectant and overcooked peas. No cake, no candles, just the hum of machines and the soft shuffle of nurses' shoes. This wasn't care. This was silence. This wasn't safety. This was being erased. I raised a man I thought I knew, but that day I met a stranger. If you've ever felt invisible, this story is for you. Please like, comment where you're watching from, and share this with someone who needs to hear it. And don't forget to subscribe to Real Her Stories, because every woman deserves to be seen. At Willow Haven, time moved like fog. The hallways always smelled faintly of bleach and boiled carrots, and the televisions in the common rooms played game shows at full volume, though no one really watched them. My room was small, with two twin beds pressed awkwardly on opposite walls. My roommate Florence rarely spoke. She snored through the night and watched the ceiling during the day, whispering names I didn't recognize. No privacy, no warmth, just beige walls and the slow unraveling of who I used to be. The staff called me Hun, Sweetie, and sometimes the new one. They were kind in the way people are to toddlers and centenarians, soft voices, shallow eye contact, never asking who I was before I wore non-slip socks and elastic waist pants. And when I asked for my phone, one of the nurses, a brisk, tight-lipped woman named Carol, told me it had been taken care of. "David said it was confusing you. We've disconnected the line," she explained with a gentle pat on my hand. "It's better this way." That was the moment I understood. This wasn't just a temporary arrangement. This was a full erasure. He had made me disappear. I tried to use the computer in the library, one of those dusty old desktops with sticky keys and dial-up speeds. My email? Wiped. Bank login? Access denied. I called the Social Security line from the receptionist's desk, and after 40 minutes of jazzy hold music, discovered that my mailing address had been changed without my knowledge. I sat back in the chair, my hands trembling. I wasn't just being cared for, I was being controlled, and slowly I began to see how it had started long before that drive to Willow Haven. David had always been charming, sharp, ambitious, but he'd also learned how to nudge, how to reframe things. He'd tell me, "You already told me that, remember?" Even when I hadn't. "You're forgetting things more often these days, Mom," he'd say with a concerned frown. It was subtle, gentle even, but over time I began to question myself. So when he offered to help manage my bills last year, I let him. When he said he'd handle the taxes, I agreed. And when he asked for my online banking password because you never remember it anyway, I gave it. Because I loved him, because I trusted him, because I didn't think my own son would ever use my love as a lever. I thought back to the sacrifices, the years I taught school full-time while caring for his father through the worst of his cancer, the nights I stayed up with lesson plans in one hand and a thermometer in the other, the weekends I skipped with friends so I could take David to baseball games or fix his science projects last minute. I remembered the birthdays I made magical, even when money was tight. The Christmas mornings I went without so he didn't have to. And now, this? I was adrift in those thoughts when a soft knock came at my door. "Ms. Harris?" a voice said gently. I looked up. A young woman stood there in scrubs, dark braids tucked into a bun, warm eyes behind slightly smudged glasses. "I'm Maya. I'm covering Florence's meds tonight." I nodded, expecting the usual in and out, but Maya didn't rush. She glanced around the room, then pulled up the visitor's chair and said, "You look like someone who doesn't belong here." I blinked. "Excuse me?" "I mean that as a compliment," she smiled. "You seem aware. You're the first person I've met here who looked me in the eye." I wasn't sure what to say, so I told her just a little, about the pancakes, the car ride, the suitcase. She listened, not nodded, listened. The next evening she came back. "I found something," she said in a low voice, holding out a folded slip of paper. It was tucked inside one of the donated Bibles in the rec room. No one's claimed it. It was a lottery ticket, a bit crumpled, dated 2 weeks earlier. "You want me to check the numbers?" Maya asked. I let out a dry chuckle. "Sure, why not? Maybe God's got a sense of humor." We looked it up on the facility computer after hours, when the halls were quiet and the nurses on night shift had dozed off at the front desk. When the screen loaded, I didn't speak. I just stared. The numbers matched. $18.7 million. At first, I felt nothing. Not joy, not even disbelief, just fear. Because now I knew for certain I had something David would want, and if he'd already erased me once, he'd try again. But I wasn't the woman he thought he'd buried in beige walls and soft restraints. He took my phone, my name, my voice, but he hadn't taken my will, and that would be his mistake. I waited until 2 a.m. to check the numbers again. Alone, in the faint blue glow of the computer in the staff lounge, I typed in the sequence slowly, like each digit might break the spell. But the result didn't change. $18.7 million. I didn't cry. I didn't even smile. I sat there, my hands folded in my lap, while my heart beat a slow and steady warning, don't let them see it. Not yet. The next day, I asked Maya to help me make a phone call. We waited until the shift change, when things got a little chaotic and questions went unanswered. I gave her a name I'd found years ago in a community bulletin for seniors, Jonah Mills, an attorney who volunteered legal services for elder clients in complicated circumstances. "He's discreet," Maya said as she dialed. "You can trust him." Jonah met us 3 days later in the visitor's room under the guise of being my nephew. Kind eyes, smart suit, no clipboard. He didn't treat me like a case, just a woman trying to get her life back. "I don't want to be found," I told him. "I want to disappear with dignity. Is that something you help with?" He nodded without hesitation. "We'll need to move quickly and carefully." The next 48 hours were a flurry of quiet coordination. Notarized documents, transfer of winnings into a blind trust, a new mailing address, a new identity through a legal name variation, a prepaid phone, and a modest cabin purchased in rural Tennessee, listed under the trust. I left everything behind except what I needed: a change of clothes, a wallet, a notebook, and the lottery ticket, tucked inside my bra like it was my heart itself. Before I left, I wrote a note on the back of my breakfast menu and left it on my pillow. "I'm not gone. I'm finally free." By dawn, I was on a Greyhound bus heading south, dressed in someone else's donated jacket and a knit cap pulled low. I didn't look back, not at the facility, not at Michigan, not at the life I had so carefully built, only to have it taken from me. The cabin wasn't glamorous, but it was mine, quiet, surrounded by trees and fog. A porch swing that creaked when the wind picked up. I could hear myself think again, and the silence didn't feel like punishment anymore. It felt like breathing. But freedom, as it turns out, has a short half-life when someone still sees you as theirs to control. 3 weeks after I left, a letter arrived. Thick, official, postmarked from Michigan. David had filed a petition in probate court. He was asking the court to declare me mentally incompetent. The documents claimed I was suffering from early-stage dementia. Attached were edited voicemails I'd left during times of stress, cut, spliced, made to sound erratic. He included a letter from a psychiatrist I had never met, stating concerning cognitive behavior and potential manipulation by third parties. David even submitted statements from an old neighbor and a college friend I barely remembered, both claiming I'd become forgetful, paranoid, unstable. But what he didn't know was that I'd been documenting everything. With Jonah's help, I built my own arsenal of truth. We gathered receipts, medical records, and a psychiatric evaluation performed by an independent doctor who spent nearly 4 hours with me in the cabin. She asked about my life, my memory, my finances, my son. When she finished, she placed a hand gently on my wrist and said, "You're the most lucid person I've spoken to all month." We compiled a timeline, every call I made, every step I took to leave the facility, every paper trail David left behind in his campaign to erase me. Most damning were the forged financial documents. Jonah uncovered several loans taken out in my name, my signature faked, my credit damaged, my account siphoned. We traced over $160,000 in misuse, much of it hidden behind his struggling business and personal expenses. And then, the day came. The courtroom felt colder than I remembered. David was already seated at the front in a navy suit and that carefully curated expression of concern. He even stood when I entered, like it was all for show. The judge called the hearing to order in the matter of Evelyn Harris's mental competency. David's attorney started with a speech full of polished worry. She vanished without warning, exhibits signs of erratic behavior, and may be under the undue influence of unknown parties. Then David spoke. His voice cracked at all the right moments. "I love my mother. I'm only trying to protect her." I stood when they called me, walked slowly to the front, each step deliberate, each breath steady. My name is Evelyn Harris. I am 65 years old. I am of sound mind and stronger spirit, and I will not let my son erase me from my own story. I handed the judge the evaluation, then the bank records, then the forged documents, then the timeline. The judge's eyes moved slowly over each page, his expression unreadable, and finally he spoke. Based on the evidence presented, especially the independent medical report and the substantial financial documentation, this court finds Ms. Harris mentally competent and fully autonomous. The petition is dismissed. I didn't celebrate. I didn't gloat. I simply turned to David, looked him in the eyes, and said, "You built this on lies, and now it's crumbling." As we walked out of the courtroom, Jonah leaned in and whispered, "That wasn't just a victory. That was a reckoning." And he was right, because David's public image had started to crack, and beneath that carefully polished mask was a man unraveling. And I was just getting started. In the weeks after the courtroom cleared and the dust settled, I sat in my small Tennessee cabin, no longer afraid. The fear had done its damage. Now it was time to build something out of the ashes. With Jonah's help, I donated $4 million to launch what we called the Evelyn Initiative, a nonprofit built not on pity, but on power. Its mission was simple: to protect elders from being manipulated, erased, and silenced under the disguise of care. We started small, one legal team, one toll-free hotline, one county. But momentum came quickly. We partnered with elder advocacy groups. We offered free legal consultations for seniors and training for caregivers to recognize the signs of financial coercion. We created a safe place for those who'd been told they were too forgetful, too emotional, or too difficult to trust. And then the letters came, from women in Ohio, Arizona, Maine, from men too, strangers who now felt seen. Because of you, I spoke up. You helped my mom get her house back. I didn't feel crazy anymore. Each one a testament, not to what I survived, but to what I refused to accept. One afternoon, a plain white envelope appeared at my door, no return address. I opened it slowly. Inside was a single page, written in a hand I'd once recognized in every birthday card and school permission slip. David. He didn't apologize, not really. The letter blamed others, lawyers, the media, even me. You let them turn you against me, he wrote. I always did what I thought was best. I folded the letter neatly, walked it to the fireplace and watched it burn, not in anger, in release. That night I brewed a cup of tea, sat on my porch wrapped in an old quilt, and began to write. Not another legal document, not a speech, just a letter to myself. Dear Evelyn, you were not a burden. You were not too trusting. You were not wrong for loving. They tried to write you out, but you rewrote the ending with truth and fire and grace. If you feel dismissed, devalued, or replaced, know this: you are not finished. You are not invisible. You are not alone. Share your story. Someone needs it. Thank you for listening. I'm Evelyn Harris, and this was my Real Her Story.